This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I'm here with Rasoul Salehi from Le Vieux and La Stella in British Columbia. How are you today, sir?
Fantastic. Glad to be in Toronto. Loving it.
Now, we are sitting here in Trinity Bellwoods Park doing a little interview, a little tasting of these fantastic wines. And for those of our viewers who are unfamiliar with these two wineries, why don't you tell us a little something?
Would love to. Perhaps maybe take a small time and tell you a little bit about the region. Okanagan, South Okanagan, very different. 23 kilometers into the Canadian border. That's where the desert ends. And the towns of Oliver and Osoyoos, for whoever thinks of them as being cool climate places, they are and they're not. Desert climate means hot days, average of 35, 37 degrees Celsius during the day, big temperature drop at night. We get less than 8 inches of rainfall a year, so very much desert climate. Very easy to grow things organically there and in a sustainable fashion. The big lakes and of course the big snow from the winter time that allows us to do a tiny bit of irrigation we need.
Do you farm organically?
Absolutely. It means the only way to do it is like me going to a restaurant and asking the chef, do you cook your food in microwave or is everything frozen? Of course not. Those are just given things. And of course we take things further. We have 17 different breeds of heritage chicken that we take the coos around the vineyards. They go out, scratch the soil, eat the bugs. The manure is super high in nitrogen. We use in our own composting, bat houses installed to bring down the pest population down. We used to have a falconry program of keeping starlings, which are an epidemic problem in the Okanagan, out of the vineyards. So we don't just stop there. There's quite a bit of initiatives that we do.
Do you go for certification or do you not bother with that?
We have in the past, a couple of the vineyards were, but to be honest with you, for a very small house where we are all the best multitaskers alive, it's just, there's only so much hours and there's only so much time and resources to spend, and we felt that that's not the way to go for us. Again, just because of the fact that we believe those are the ways to do things anyways. To go for that and to use that as a marketing scheme is not the right one for us.
Now, both wineries are truly boutique wineries. The production is quite small, is it not?
Indeed. We average about 35 to 4,000 cases a year at Le Vieux and La Stella. It's an all French fare at Le Vieux and a nod to the Italians at La Stella. The husband and wife who own them and I work with them. When it came to, I guess they made their money in commercial real estate and they decided to lose it back in the wine industry. They don't call it a wine business. They wanted to build a legacy, and so do we. It was all about putting your foot down and doing something that you're passionate about. Le Vieux is a winery that pays homage to Northern Rhone and the varieties and the people there. La Stella is where we go to coastal area of Tuscany and we have a little bit of a reincarnation of the super Tuscan wines and what goes on around there. We borrow the know-how, we get our inspirations, and the tip of the hat goes to those people. Why reinvent the wheel? It's been invented, it's been perfected, so for us to go ahead and redo the whole thing would be foolish. Having said that, at the same time, we do keep alive with the spirit of the Wild Wild West. We do things a little differently at times. We are in some ways very traditional and in some ways very open-minded. To take the Viognier Roussanne, for example, very classically made fermentation in a combination of stainless and neutral barrels, as well as a little bit of a new barrel, large format barrels. But here's a little bit of innovation and a little bit of that South Okanagan spirit of experimentation. There's a single acacia barrel.
Why acacia?
Why not? It's a little bit of acacia, aromatic wood, very dense wood, takes a long time to air dry it and be able to bend it into shape to a barrel, so much like a cave ripened cheese.
Yes, yeah.
It's about 3 to 5 years of air drying the staves before they can bend into shape to form a barrel. It tends to give the wines an elderflower, high-toned white floral notes, which
something that would work very well with the Viognier Roussanne.
Precisely,
yes, yeah.
Exactly. It's basically a little bit of a lift for the Viognier. In some ways, like old school Barolos, or Amarone, the VA would allow to have the nose lifted.
Yes, yeah.
The nose would be, in other words, more pronounced, and that's the idea here. It's only about 1.5% to 2% of the wine, so it's meant to be a little sprinkling. And you wouldn't quite get it if you didn't know about it, but once you find out about it and once you actually taste the wines from the barrel directly, you can see its effect.
Interesting. Now, I have to say, and I'm not blowing smoke up your backside here, but these two Syrah that I've tasted were just absolutely stellar.
Thank
What
you.
makes those wines so special? Both the Syrah and the Equinox Syrah. What is the difference between those two wines, and what is it that makes them so bloody fantastic?
We are blessed. If you're a small winery, you're blessed with the climate and the conditions that we have. If you're a big winery, now all of a sudden is an inconvenience to you. South Okanagan, in some ways, like Burgundy, is like Burgundy, and my reference point is the fact that there's massive vintage variations from year to year. 2009, sun, moon, and star lined up, and it's just one of those years that works phenomenally well for Syrah. We were working with 8 different vineyards in the 3 sub-appellations of the South Okanagan. So in other words, we got the palette and all the different paints on it. The painter is equipped to do a masterpiece. We got the Black Sage Bench with its afternoon sun, sandier-based soils. We got the Golden Mile and pockets of the volcanic soils. They're mostly alluvial, heavier-based soils. Morning sun, afternoon shade, cooler microclimate within a hot mesoclimate within a cool macroclimate. And of course, when it comes to south of Osayo, it's the East Bench and the West Bench, all-day sun. Locals call some of the vineyards there Chateauneuf-du-Pape. Temperatures can go up to 40 degrees. The difference between the Syrah and the Equinox Syrah really just comes down to the bottling. We do things exactly the same way in the vineyard. Everything is done by hand. Everything is obviously done organically. We pick everything in shallow 30-pound picking bins, and then we sort it twice more at the winery. So we end up with very, very clean fruit that allows us to have a long fermentation and maceration and age the wines anaerobically without the need of adding much in the ways of sulfites or having to keep racking the wines.
How old are these vines right now, the Syrah vines? Because there's an incredible intensity in both of these bottlings.
Much to people's, unlike what most people tend to think, young vines are very much capable of giving you intense fruit flavors. It's usually the teenage years that they're the troublesome, in some ways like us too, humans. These would be an average of 4 to 6 year old vines.
Really?
They are super young, in fact. The Roussanne portion was first leaf, the Viognier second leaf. So you're talking about 3 and 4 year old vines there. And you saw the results, and we tasted together and just blown away. You keep the yields down. Your pruning is done right. You're vigilant in the vineyard, and you do things with passion and with excitement, and you set out to do what we do. We do not spare any cost. We just simply pass it on to the consumer. Great wines can be made. And that's exactly what's going on here. Old vines, no doubt about it. They give you more depth.
Now, I was incredibly impressed with those Syrah, but then we moved on to these more kind of Tuscan-leaning wines. And I have to say, that's one of the better Merlots I've ever tasted. That's the second wine there, the
Maestoso.
The Maestoso, yes, yeah.
To quickly tell you about these two wines, so we are now leaving Northern Rhone and we are going for a little side trip to coastal area of Tuscany. Fortissimo, I should maybe backtrack a little bit and say that at La Stella, we name our wines after musical notes to convey an emotion, to tell you what you're about to get into. Because just to say Merlot or Cabernet or Sangiovese is like going to a restaurant and on the menu it says steak. Was it grass-fed? Was it grain-fed? Was it dry aged? Was it wet aged? Was it charbroiled? Was it pan-fried, finished in the oven? Was it barbecued? Sous vide? The flavors will be very different. So we tell you about what you're about to get into through one word, an Italian musical note. Fortissimo, loud, boisterous. Wine with jagged tannins, high acidity, something that sommeliers and restaurants would love to have with food. Entirely unfined and unfiltered is a blend of Sangiovese Grosso, a little bit of Piccolo, Grosso being the Brunello clone, Merlot Cab Franc. Fermentation done extremely differently than they do in Bordeaux or the Bordelais do. More gentle fermentation, longer pre and post fermentation maceration. And of course the élevage of the wine, the aging is long, no, not the 12, 15, 16 months, but closer to 20, 22 months. And it happens very much in the Tuscan tradition in a combination of 225, 500, 600, 1,000 liter barrels. And of course Slavonian, Hungarian oak and French oak. Quite amazing, beautiful wines. Maestoso here is a solo Merlot. Maestoso, top of the crescendo. When Pavarotti's vein used to stick out, it's the full expression of Merlot. Extremely low yields. It's been as low as 900 kilograms per acre and as high as 1 3/4. So you're talking about 4 or 5 bunches of grapes per vine as opposed to the more typical 15, 20, 25 bunches. Manicured vines. Everything is just handled with golden gloves in the vineyard all the way into the winery. It's a big Merlot. Sometimes wines are about finesse, sometimes about elegance, sometimes about balance, and sometimes they're about sheer balls of fury.
Yeah, that's
Power,
what I was thinking.
go bigger or
Yeah,
go
yeah.
home. And that's exactly what that wine is. Our inspiration was to send a nod, and if the fine folks at Ornella's Macedo, Torrita Ready Gaffi, McYoli's Mesorio were to try this wine, they'll be like, I see where they were going for. Good for them.
Well, I have to say, I've really enjoyed tasting your wines today. Thank you very much for joining us at Good Food Revolution. We really appreciate both your company and your wines.
Much appreciated, James.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.